is what I think they are the video equivalent of chess.
Grew up with 3 brothers, so there's a lot of competition in the house. It was either sports game or fighting games. And I remember, like, the earliest memory I had was just chilling at the mall, watching my brothers play Street Fighter 2, the original Street Fighter 2, not even Super or anything.
Fighting games are weird because it's like, there's sort of like 2 categories to them. It's like, on the one hand, it's like you can play directly against somebody in the room with you. And I've been in quite a few situations where you're either like, you know, either in a room with somebody's got a PlayStation and you're just like cycling through people, or you're actually in an arcade and somebody keeps throwing quarters onto the different you know, the consoles to keep going through, and you're you know, going through opponents or they're beating you and you're going back and forth. So it's almost like there's 2 aspects to that, where you're either playing against somebody with you or you're playing against somebody like remotely.
My relationship with fighting games started from me being the worst player in the world to subpar. Over the years, many different games have improved how I felt about it. At first, I really didn't care for those kind of games. Fighters were the games that I never wanted to play because I would always lose, and then my cousins would rub it in my face. And back when Primal Rage was the first one I ever played, and that game started it all for me.
Fighting games bring this level of camaraderie and competitiveness that other games can't bring. Shooting games and other competitive games like that, you're in a team and it works, but when you go online or when you go with friends, you don't have a level of control that you have with fighting games. It's only you in a fighting game. When you do something wrong, it's your fault. And that's what brings a lot of people into fighting games, that level of control.
Street Fighter 2 is like the granddaddy of fighting games, man.
Street Fighter 2, I look back at it and I appreciate everything it did for the fighting games. I mean, I can't say I really knew how to play it because I was way too young, but the game was awesome.
A fighting game that anybody can relate to and anybody has played at one point, whether it be in an arcade room or on the Super Nintendo. And a lot of people in the fighting game community now are really young. So their older brothers or an older friend can say, oh, why don't you know how to do Hadouken? Why don't you know how to do a charge move? And they'll teach you, and there was no command list back then. So when you learned how to do Hadouken, it was just this magical thing.
Hadouken! My character's always been Zangief. Zangief is that guy. He really is. He's a man's man. He's like a bear, a walking Russian bear. His grabs, they did a lot of damage, and I know people didn't like that, but the thing is, they shouldn't have messed up to get in that situation in the first place.
Street Fighter 3 was a big deal for me because I was a huge Sega fan, and that was around the Dreamcast era. New Generation was kind of a letdown, so I never played Second Impact.
The characters that I play are Sean and Akuma, and Sean is bottom tier, and then you have Akuma, which is everybody and their mom plays Akuma. He went from being top tier all the way to booty tier. He's now the Dan of Third Strike, Street Fighter 3. I remember he used to have combos that connected perfectly. In Second Generation, he had basically like his dragon uppercut would lead into another attack, and it would cause so much damage and it would leave the people vulnerable, and you'd have so many different situations that you can move in on the person. When Third Strike came, I was really upset.
The weirdest thing to it was when it first dropped was that there was like none of the original cast from Street Fighter 2 in it. So that really drove a lot of people to say like, what is this? Is this really a Street Fighter? Because it's like there was no Ryu, there was no Ken, there was actually no Chun-Li in it originally. But because of like the fans' actual basically, like, I don't want to say if it's anger, but their resentment towards it, I guess, like they actually brought in Ryu, Ken, and Chun-Li into it just to give a little familiarity to it, though it kind of still didn't work out. Then Capcom did the usual tradition of releasing several incarnations of their game, so now they came Second Impact, and then the one that they got it right, I would say, is Third Strike. Even though it didn't add too many more people to it, the only ones were like Akuma, I believe, were added to it. It was a really good game. It was very technical.
I've heard about Evo for a while now, and I'm surprised by how fast it's grown in a decade almost. I remember how hard it was just to find footage of it, but now it's like everywhere on the web.
Evo's like the biggest international tournament that we hold here in America is Evo, run by cats over at Shoryuken. And like I said, it's like I said, Evo is where you come to really see where you stand in the world, not your neighborhood, not your your street or anything like that, or your state, the world. If you do good at Evo, like you're good. Period. Like if you get top 16 at Evo, like that solidifies you in the fighting game community as someone to be reckoned with.
Pass.
Evo,
Pass.
Street Fighter 3,
Pass.
Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers. Oh God.
Smash Brothers is a fun game. I can see how people could take it seriously, but I mean, I find it funner like to play with items and stuff. Huge Nintendo fan.
It's one of those games that a lot of people have mixed feelings about. No one can argue that it's not a fun game. When Super Smash Bros. 64 came out, everyone played it, everyone had fun. But because of a lot of balance issues, a lot of people couldn't adapt it to a tournament scene, though it still was. And then Melee came out, and that's when there was a competitive scene coming out, and that's when people really started playing. Some people got so attached to Melee when Brawl came out, and there were trip mechanics and other things that people didn't like. They loved the game so much, they loved their fighting game community, that they couldn't accept a new one or a third one, and of course there's going to be a fourth one. A lot of people are still going to be stuck in Melee, some people are going to be stuck in Brawl, but that's just that level of love that a fighting game gives that many games can't give.
My roommate in college had an N64, and we used to go and play Smash Brothers all the goddamn time. And I love that game. I personally, I know Kirby's supposed to be like God, and they're like Fox is God, and all the other characters are God. I loved Link, and I think Luigi, and like I wasn't great at it, but that game. I think that the Smash Brothers as a whole, it sort of encapsulates the entire sort of Nintendo versus the entire industry right there. Because you look at every other fighting game, they've got online fighting, and they're like a tournament fighter. And Smash Brothers is all about just getting a bunch of people in a room together and just beating the shit out of each other. And it's like, okay, yeah, you know what, for the Smash Brothers, for the Wii, they had the remote play, but nobody, to my knowledge, nobody used that. I mean, I think I tried that once with a friend, and it's not the same. It's all about being in the same room, and you're beating the hell out of somebody. You're doing the little rock smash with Kirby, and you're talking shit at them. Or they're playing Jigglypuff, and you're like, why the fuck are you Jigglypuff? You're not gonna win with fucking Jigglypuff. And it's like, you lose that when you're playing remotely. And that game was all about being together. And it's not, it is a fighting game. I mean, there is combat, and you're hurting people's feelings. And that is a fighting game, and it is the same and yet so different from every other fighting game. Okay, when my parents got us a PlayStation, they got us two games. They got us NASCAR 98 and Bushido Blade. And there's no way in hell I'm talking about NASCAR 98. Bushido Blade was awesome because that was the one game where they actually talk about in the manual, and I read the manuals back in the day, they actually talk about samurais would just stand there and not move because they were waiting for somebody to just flinch, and then you would defeat them. And Bushido Blade captured that aspect of it where the first person to move was usually the first person to die.
When you get cut, you can lose body parts, you lose legs. If you lose your leg, you're hopping, you can kill yourself.
That was the fighting game that was done as realistic as a fighting game can be. Because there's no power meter, there's no health, there's no combos. It's just straight up, you've got a sword and you will fuck somebody up with that sword as soon as you can.
I I think the characters is what like really made it stand out. Because like I said, like there were 3D fighters before, but the characters had like a lot of history when it came to, you know, just story-wise. It was like really in depth when it came to that, like the Mishimas and all that jazz. Even though like my favorite character Jin didn't come in until the third one.
It did a lot of things out for the West because Virtua Fighter was the first 3D fighting game, but Virtua Fighter actually never did much for the West because of the arcade scene, but Tekken really expanded towards the West because of PlayStation.
You win!
There are so many things about Mortal Kombat that just make it an innovator. It was the first game that really brought out, you know, the ESRB.
Wins fatality.
I was never a Mortal Kombat fan, except for the fact that I think, what is it, Noob Saibot was the name of the creators backwards. I thought that was always cool, but I never really cared for Mortal Kombat. I thought like the whole photorealistic graphics was kind of not cheap, but it wasn't for me. But the thing that you have to respect Mortal Kombat for is it created the ESRB. If it didn't have the blood and the people ripping out spines and shit, like nobody, not that, I mean, there's a valid audience for that, but that's what got all the politicians' attention. That's what got Tipper Gore on our asses.
We played a lot of Mortal Kombat growing up. Mortal Kombat 2 all day. I mean, that game had its up and down, but I'm glad it's back on its feet.
It was the first game that promoted blood, got its own movie. Everyone loved it. Everyone knows Mortal Kombat.
It has begun!
The revival of fighting games. Street Fighter 4. Maybe Tekken 5. I mean, that was the dark age, but Street Fighter, I feel like, just had the name to back it up. People who kept playing fighting games did go to Tekken and Soul Calibur at the time, but just Street Fighter is such an iconic thing. You go up to somebody on the street, say Hadouken, and they're like, oh, Ryu, Hadouken, you know. So that's just the name of Street Fighter.
Well, now, like, because we have such a, like, we have a vast, like, variety of fighting games to play. Now we're at that point where people can just pick what to play and, you know, spend time and be good at it. You know, they can spend time to be good at it, or they can just, you know, play for fun, play for their, you know, the heck of it, play with friends. You see back here, or, you know, just to play to kill time, or just because you just love playing fighting games for yourself, you can just do that. But now it's like becoming such a scene. Like, it already was a scene, but it was a very underground scene.
Fighting games have always been there, and there's always been a competitive scene. There's always been an arcade that people can meet up at. Someone meet up in the room, hey, let's put in this fighting game. But once Street Fighter 4 came out, and once other fighting games come out, like Ultimate Marvel or Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Vanilla, it brought everyone out who was interested in this scene, or people who decided to leave the scene. It brought them back in, and the amount of streaming people who watch these fighting games, it's just reached numbers that it's never been at before.
Fighting games evolved a lot throughout the years. I mean, people like certain fighting games. I mean, it's so vast now. I mean, in the future, it's probably not going to be just one genre for fighting anymore. It's going to be separated to multiple fighters, as it is now.
Fighting games brought me into a community that I didn't know was there. You know, I met new friends, I met new acquaintances, and it's a community that a lot of people don't know it's out there. And if you're curious, fighting games are one of the best ways you can start in a competitive scene.
Fighting games, the community, we don't judge, we accept all, you know, we're open-minded, it's all about love in the community. Like, you know, if you can, now you can honestly, like, step out. If you could do a little research, like, go on, like, some forums, I can guarantee you would find, like, a little community of people that love playing Street Fighter, or have, you know, enjoyed playing Street Fighter for a very long time, that are actually, you know, maybe doing weekly events, or, you know, monthly tournaments to go to. And you go out and you meet these people and you develop these really good relationships that, like, last you a very long time. And You know, it's definitely something that shouldn't be missed out on, especially if you love video games as well. Because nobody likes being just like the only person playing their game. Or you know, nowadays you can go online and play. You know, anybody. You can just sit on Xbox Live or PSN. But to play like a fighting game with people, like that's like the best experience you could ever have as a game.